Hello everyone, welcome back to the Panzer Dragoon remake. Oh my gosh, story. There is like a bunch of backstory in this game, like about like an empire that took over and stuff, and you need to keep the Black Dragon from getting to the tower because reasons. It's surprisingly in depth, but for this kind of game, you probably don't care. Which is, I think probably the reason why they made the RPG in the first place is because they wrote so much lore for these games, and it's just like, we want people to care about what we wrote. God damn it!
Well, yeah.
No. Pew 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 pew.
It was an odd time for gaming, particularly narratively, the Sega Saturn, PlayStation era, because like at that point in time, games hadn't really done serious tone all that often outside of RPGs, I would say.
Yeah, not usually.
Yeah,
like most of I mean, even something like Doom had its tongue-in-cheek kind of elements to it.
Doom is interesting because it started out as a much more narratively ambitious game with multiple playable characters and stories, and
if you look up the Doom Bible, it's crazy.
Yeah,
shit.
and then they realized that was a bit much and just focused on the one guy shooting demons, and it became a much simpler, more straightforward affair. So the development process for games back in the day was always a bit stranger, and you got games like Tomb Raider, which were going for like a way more atmospheric game, a way more atmospheric approach to an adventure. And nowadays we think of like classic Tomb Raider as a bit silly, and yeah, by today's standards, it's very silly. But that was pretty goddamn serious for the time.
You kind of had Metal Gear Solid and everything else. It was kind of like trying to be that in some regard.
Metal Gear Solid was like the turning points for serious tone narrative gaming experiences during that generation. That was when they like really nailed the feel for that.
Yeah, I feel like it was gaming entering its metaphorical teenage years.
Yeah,
where
for sure.
Stuff that kind of seems silly is super serious and important, And, like, it's easy to make fun of that kind of stuff. Like, again, it's easy to call Tomb Raider, like, silly, but it also brings with it a sort of sincerity that gives a lot of games from those era their charm.
Yeah.
Where, they're silly, theoretically silly concepts taken seriously. There's a lot
that's the Mega Man X series in a nutshell.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, I mean, back to Tomb Raider. Like the story material is all pretty silly, and then of course you could talk for hours about how Lara Croft's like character design is just not realistic at all or whatever. But when you actually sit down to play the game, and you're playing through a level, and you're slowly, exploring these big ass, slow, meticulous platforming adventure stages. The feeling is undeniably, like, ahead of its time, I would say. And that's probably what gave it a lot of its staying power once people got past the pin-up art advertisements and actually got to playing the game.
Yeah. Like, I'd say, like, even stuff like Dead or Alive, like, people wouldn't get that game if it was just boobs, I think, Like, even Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball is reportedly an actually very good volleyball game. So,
I don't know what standards that's judged against, but I've played a bit of it. Like, I picked up a used copy for the Xbox 360 on a whim not very long ago, and I couldn't get into it at all. It was so terrible.
But I feel like something won't get popular most of the time just because of Flash. Like, there usually has to be some amount of substance.
I haven't played any of the Dead or Alive games before 5, but once I got into 5, I really dug the mechanics. I really do. They're not quite as technical or rigid as Tekken, but I think that gives it its own kind of appeal, It's easier to button mash, sure, but also when you really get into playing it well, it's a blast.
Yeah, and there's a lot of examples like that. I mean, granted, there are exceptions. Like, I think the biggest exception I can think of is, like, the Transformers movies, where I feel like everybody agrees that there's nothing redeemable to those, but they are popular anyway. And I mean, most of the time, when you look at bad series that go on for a long time, like Tyler Perry movies and stuff like that, you can see the bits that some people see value in. I feel like nobody sees that for Transformers movies.
I feel like I can't really be as harsh on the Transformers movie fan base as I used to be, because I watched Rise of Skywalker and genuinely enjoyed the dumb action. So
okay, that's true. Or like maybe the Resident Evil movies might be a better.
All right, the first Resident Evil movie, I'll say, has some redeeming qualities to it, but everything after that is just. Please no. Stop destroying my beloved fan base, my beloved franchise, please.
If we're talking about silly things that take themselves seriously, then that's Resident Evil in a nutshell, or at least some of them, roughly half.
If you've ever seen the fucking Nemesis Muppet or their recreation of the Wesker scene from Resident Evil 5, just no, please.
Wesker in general in the movies.
They recreated the Wesker scene from Resident Evil 5 in the movies?
Yeah, yes. And it's extremely low budget and badly directed. Like, okay, Hyperbit Hero, Hayden, you remember him from way back when. He just straight up did a straight comparison between the two. Just a short little video playing scenes from the movie and then the corresponding cut from the game that they were imitating. It's so bad. I'm gonna link it to you after this part so that you can see it. But okay, are we on the penultimate level or the final boss?
This is the final boss.
Oh, okay.
This is the dragon we were chasing the whole time, and now he's a super duper dragon, and you're supposed to kill him. He's actually not that hard, all things considered.
For having such a developed lore, this game has a very video game plot.
Oh yeah, of course. It's the guy's going to the place, stop the guy. And of course, like any video game, if your plan is to stop the guy before the bad thing can happen, the bad thing will happen no matter what, so you can have a fun boss
fight. Not in Path of Radiance.
Wait, you stop the...
You actually stop the bad guy before he unleashes the God Monster.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that's... You know what?
I mean, it happens anyway in Radiant Dawn, but...
Oh, man.
In Three Houses, they go the extra mile and only have the bad thing happen in one of the storylines.
Wow, okay. You know, that's fairly unique, because the only other game that kind of subverts that, from what I can think of, is Dragon Quest IV, where the bad guy's plan is to wake up the evil god, and you go down there while he's still sleeping and punch him in the face, and then the game continues after that point. So yeah, but most games it's just like they're trying to summon the evil bad thing. Oh no, we've got to stop them. They summon it anyway. Well, we can just punch him before anything bad happens, and it would be exactly the same. I
am going to summon this evil god monster of total power. You and your group cannot possibly box him with a sword at the end.
Let's not forget Final Fantasy VI, where Kefka straight up wins halfway through the game. And you're basically just fighting him because it's better than just letting him sit there.
Yeah, pretty much. I will say that there is a small difference between normal mode and hard mode. I played this run on normal mode. On hard mode, when you beat the big form of the dragon, afterwards the small dragon pops up, and you basically repeat the boss fight from Chapter 2 again and kill the dragon again. So it's a small difference in hard mode. But hard mode is also a lot harder, obviously. Partially because in hard mode, you don't refill as much of your health after you beat a stage. So it's a lot easier to die. And also that you take more damage and there's more bullets flying around. I usually, if I'm replaying this game and doing it on normal mode, because that's the most comfortable difficulty for me to beat the game. And it's not really that different to the point where I feel like I need to show off an entire another playthrough, because it is almost identical to the boss fight you have with the dragon in Chapter 2. So, and I don't think that the cutscenes change at all. If they do, I'm sure chat will correct me. But it's like, oh no, the dragon, he sacrificed his dragonness to save the world.
I wonder if that's the same dragon from Panzer Dragoon Orta.
So, I know that Panzer Dragoon 2, I did some research before we started. Panzer Dragoon 2 is a prequel to Panzer Dragoon 1, and I hate when games do that, for the record, and title them number 2 when they're actually a prequel. Like, I mean, when you get further into a series, I'm a little bit less... I'm less hard on that, because, you know, if you title your game Fantasy RPG number 5, and it's actually a prequel, then, okay, the 5th... It makes sense because then people will buy the game. But if you're game number 2 and you're a prequel, then it just bothers me. Another game that did that was Lufia. Lufia 2 is a prequel to Lufia 1, which is really annoying because no, you're not the second game. You're the prequel.
Well, no one's going to buy a game titled Zero when there isn't even a 2 yet. So, you know.
Well, sometimes they'll buy a 02. How many people, Ryan, when Mega Man Zero came out, how many people thought it was supposed to be a prequel game?
I don't really remember.
Okay. I mean, that's fair.
Mind you, this came out in like 2002, so I was like 12.
Okay.
So I didn't exactly have internet access a lot at the time.
That makes sense. I mean, like a Mega Man prequel game where you played as Proto Man or something would be fun, I guess. But, you know, whatever. Anyway, yeah, this game's fun. If you like arcade games like this, I really do recommend trying it out. It's not, like, again, it's not the deepest game in the world, but I don't think that that's necessarily a detriment when what it does do, it does fairly well. Its biggest crime is just not being super pretty, really.
Yeah, I think I'm going to wait for a price drop on this one, to be perfectly honest. I don't want to spend $25 on this, per se.
Yeah, and I
think it'll be a better buy once it hits like 15 or something.
If you have an Xbox 360 or an Xbox One, you could just get Panzer Dragoon Orta for a much cheaper price. And yeah, it won't be as shiny as this, but it's a damn fun game and a good way to dip your feet into the Panzer Dragoon gameplay style.
I'm interested in trying that out eventually. They're also planning on remaking the second game, which is apparently better in many respects. Again, I'm not super familiar with the lore or what the old Saturn game, I almost called it Dreamcast, the old Saturn games did, but I have, from what research I've done, it does seem that people think that the second one is better. So, oh yeah, I also love that they they had the kids drawing of the Panzer Dragon, which is pretty cute. But yeah, I do recommend, like, again, I think it is totally reasonable to want to wait for a price drop or a sale for this, but if you can get it for $10-15, I absolutely do recommend it, because it is a fun time, especially if, you know, you've been waiting for the Nintendo to make a Star Fox game and you haven't, you know, felt like Star Fox Zero fulfilled that that job particularly well. I'd say that this is and this is definitely a good time. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did.
Yeah, I'm surprised you picked it up.
Well, you know what? I was just curious. I think that the fact that they shadow dropped it made me interested enough to pick it up. I think that doing the shadow drop is a risky move, because a lot of the time people don't have the money to, you know, buy a game day one. It just so happened that I had, you know, a spare $25 that I was willing to spend on something.
I think at this point in time, it was actually a pretty good decision, because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, I was definitely looking for something to take my mind off of stuff.
Like, digital release video games are doing pretty well right now, I think.
Yeah, you know, I think that's part of the reason why people are also getting so into the games that they're playing right now. Be it, like, you know, completely reworking an Animal Crossing town.
It was a fucking perfect time for Animal Crossing New Horizons. Let me tell you.
Look, I think I've said this on a... I don't think I've said this on a video, though, but one of my favorite comics was released around this time was somebody playing Animal Crossing and be like, wow, I wish that I could just stay inside and play this game all day, and then a monkey, the monkey from Animal Crossing, breaks open the door, and then you say...
Curls his finger.
2 wishes remain. And then the character just has, like, these giant ass eyes. It's just like, oh shit. What have I done? But yeah, so hopefully we get the second game soon-ish. They said that they were making both of them. I would assume that if they made an engine for the first one. Oh yeah, the music looping in this is a little bit weird. It just kind of like cuts kind of strangely, but that's a nitpick.
I wonder what the music looping was like in the original Saturn game, actually, because CD-based music at the time was really odd.
From what I could tell, it was designed to be synced to the levels. They did, in a patch, add the original Saturn music to this game, and it syncs with the original levels very, very well.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, this is a fun time. Hopefully the sequel comes out soon, and if it's good, I will probably record that one as well. Thank you for watching, everyone, and have a good night. Or day. Or afternoon. Whenever the hell you're watching.
In case we don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. I've watched that movie too.